is not found in the fire that begins a story. It is found in the hand that stays when the world grows dim. In Luciana, he found the rarest companion of all, someone who could not touch the wounds of his past, but who chose every single day to rewrite the way his story would end. And for a man who had spent decades portraying other people's lives, the greatest role he ever lived was simply this: learning that sometimes the most powerful love is not the one that begins loud, but the one that refuses to leave. But healing, even at its strongest, is still breakable. Just when Robert Duvall finally found a fragile piece beside Luciana, life struck with the kind of blow that silences a home. In 2000, at 69, after surviving heartbreak, rebuilding himself, and learning to breathe again, the phone rang, and the words on the other end cut straight through him. His younger brother, John Duvall, only 62, had died after a sudden medical crisis brought on by complications from cancer, a battle he had kept mostly private. The man who had understood Robert long before the world ever knew his name was gone. And in that single shattering moment, something ancient inside him simply broke. John was never the loud one, never the one who needed applause. While Robert lived beneath lights, John lived by truth, a steady, grounded entertainment lawyer whose integrity became rare currency in Hollywood. Their father had been disciplined. John was decency. Their childhood home had carried distance. John carried the warmth that softened it. He was the only person who knew the boy Robert had been before fame remolded him. Robert once murmured to a friend, "He understood me before the world ever did." And it was no exaggeration. Losing John wasn't losing a sibling. It was losing the witness to your origin. The one person who remembers the cracks and shadows you don't speak of. The weeks after John's passing became some of the darkest, most suffocating days of Robert's life. Not loud grief, the quiet kind that steals your breath. Luciana watched him move as though gravity had doubled. He sat for hours on the porch, hands slack, gaze fixed on nothing, swallowed by memories that tightened around him like a vice. Sometimes he whispered John's name so softly it barely existed. Other times he said nothing, silence becoming the only language grief allowed him. But the tremor was there in the pause before he answered questions. In the distant look when childhood was mentioned, in the way his voice thinned when he spoke of family. Losing a brother is losing a compass. Losing the one who understood your silences is losing your map back to yourself. Yet in the middle of that wreckage, something shifted, not loudly, but with a gravity that reshaped him. He began to see life not as a series of roles and awards, but as a fragile web of connection. The ones he had lost, the ones he had broken, the ones he still had time to protect. One morning while Luciana brewed coffee, he said quietly, "I wish John had met you longer." A simple sentence, but inside it lived a lifetime of ache and gratitude. It was the sound of man realizing that love, in any form, is painfully limited. John's absence didn't break Robert Duvall, but humbled him, softened him, carved him open in a way no film ever could. And in that softened space, the life he was building with Luciana gained a deeper, almost sacred meaning. Not born from fear of losing, but from choosing fiercely to hold on to what remained. Some losses quiet a man, and some split him open before the last wound has even begun to heal. When grief returned in 2022, it did not whisper. It came like a blade, sharp, merciless, unapologetic, and it took James Caan. To the world, James was Sonny Corleone. To Robert Duvall, he was the wild-hearted brother he had chosen for himself. Their bond wasn't built on red carpets, but in the trenches of their craft, blistering lights overhead, Coppola pushing them past exhaustion, bruising scenes that stole sleep, and nights where adrenaline shook their hands long after the camera stopped rolling. Fire and stone, chaos and stillness. Their differences somehow locked perfectly into place. For 50 years, they carried each other's jokes, frustrations, and private storms. They survived marriages, failures, aging, reinvention, and remained tethered by a loyalty that fame could neither create nor destroy. So when the call came, revealing the truth that felt unreal even as he heard it, James Caan gone, taken by a massive heart attack brought on by coronary artery disease, worsened by heart failure and COPD. Robert didn't cry out. He simply froze as if the world had shifted off its axis. The world mourned an icon. Robert mourned the last living witness to the younger man he once was. And when he finally spoke publicly, his voice carried the trembling weight of a lifetime. He called it a tremendous loss. 2 small words. Yet inside them lived 5 decades of brotherhood, loyalty, and the kind of love men like them were never taught to put into words. In the days after James's passing, Robert moved with a heaviness Luciana had never seen. Not the heaviness of age, but of absence. He sat before the television, replaying old Godfather scenes, not to admire what they created, but to feel James breathe again. The swagger, the heat, the half-mad laughter that never made it to the final cut. He watched the younger versions of themselves, strong, reckless, unbroken, and something inside him folded. Losing Caan wasn't losing a colleague. It wasn't even losing a friend. It was losing a mirror to his youth, losing the witness to the private battles beneath every iconic role, losing the one man who carried memories that no biography, no documentary, no audience could ever retrieve. And grief at this stage of life did not stab. It settled like a stone beneath the ribs, heavy and unmoving, hollowing him in ways he no longer had the strength to hide. Yet Robert carried it with the dignity that had always defined him. No bitterness, no complaint, only gratitude. Fierce, aching gratitude for a friendship that had survived fame, chaos, distance, and time. James Caan's absence carved another silent room inside his heart. A room filled not with regret, but with remembrance so deep it reshaped the texture of his final years. It was, as he said, a tremendous loss, one that rewrote the last chapters of his life with equal parts pain and a love strong enough to leave a mark time itself could not erase. Now at 93, Robert Duvall stands at a point in life few men ever reach. A summit carved not from privilege but from persistence, loss, and a relentless courage to begin again. His estimated net worth of $70 to $75 million is more than a financial measure. It is the echo of decades spent clawing his way upward from cold, lonely New York rooms, where he once stretched meals and walked miles through winter slush just to afford acting classes. Today, that wealth rests across a quiet and astonishing empire. His 360-acre Virginia horse farm worth several million. His Buenos Aires residence purchased as much for love as legacy. Multiple investment portfolios managed over decades and a steady current of royalties from The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Tender Mercies, and dozens of films that continue to stream across the world. In addition to real estate, he holds long-term positions in production companies he helped build, a trust managed discreetly for charitable work, and an art and memorabilia collection valued in the high 6 figures. Handwritten Coppola notes, vintage photographs, rare scripts, and gifts from co-stars long gone. None of these treasures came easily. They are the financial shadows of a man who survived rejection, heartbreak, wore films shot in jungles, marriages that slipped through his fingers, and years when the phone never rang. His assets tell the story of success. The scars beneath them tell the story of the journey. On the Virginia farm, the heart of his world, life breathes through every handmade detail. The 19th century main house holds wraparound porches, a library lined with annotated scripts, a sunlit kitchen that opens to rolling fields, and a private study where he keeps a small safe containing early letters from his parents and the first paycheck he ever earned. There is a recording barn he turned into a rehearsal sanctuary, a private lake reflecting fire-gold sunsets, renovated stables, a caretaker's house, and a restored guest cottage preserved for family and close friends. In Buenos Aires, his second home rises above the hum of the city, where he found love again. Tall ceilings, a tango corner with scuffed wooden floors, windows spilling light onto photographs of Luciana and the street where they first met. His cars reflect meaning rather than excess. A pristine 1960s convertible he still drives on bright mornings. a classic Mercedes for long countryside rides, two modern SUVs for comfort, and several vintage watches stored carefully in a cedar box. Gifts from Coppola, Brando, and crew members who knew the measure of the man. In his will, finalized with quiet thought, he divides his world with grace. The Virginia estate, creative rights, and long-term trusts pass to Luciana. The Buenos Aires home is shared between her and their charitable foundation. And in a profoundly tender gesture, he reserves a private allocation for the two daughters he helped raise in his first marriage. Women he still contacts privately, respectfully, as if to say that fatherhood, even without biology, imprints itself permanently. His days now unfold with a softness earned only through survival. Mornings begin on the porch with coffee warming his hands as the sun rises over the fields. He reads scripts aloud, sometimes entire scenes, savoring the rhythm rather than preparing for work. Luciana walks the trails with him, adjusting her pace when his steps falter, steadying him when the terrain shifts. And on quiet mornings, when the air feels especially tender, he sometimes receives calls or handwritten notes from the two daughters he helped raise in his first marriage. Women now grown with children of their own, who still call him Bobby and speak to him with the affection of daughters who never forgot the man who tucked them in a bed and read them stories. Their bond, reshaped by time but unbroken, has become one of the gentlest constants of his later years. Afternoon hours drift between tending to the horses, rewatching the classic films that shaped him, supervising charitable projects in northern Argentina, and offering guidance to young actors who seek not fame but truth. Luciana manages most of the logistics now, often reading emails aloud to him, including messages from his former stepdaughters, updates about their families, photographs of birthdays, moments they still want to share with the man who once quietly filled the role of father. He keeps their pictures in the study, not displayed for guests, but placed where his eyes naturally fall when he sits down. Reminders of a love that changed form but never disappeared. Evenings belong to stillness. He and Luciana side by side on the porch swing, watching the world fall into dusk, talking in the soft, intimate way of two people who have survived storms together. Sometimes he speaks of the past marriages that broke him. Sometimes of the children he never had. Sometimes of the two girls he did, not by blood but by choice. And how grateful he is that affection, once planted, can survive the shifting landscapes of life. Luciana listens with a tenderness that has become the backbone of his final chapter. Time no longer chases him. It sits beside him. Fame no longer defines him. Wisdom does. And in this quiet season, his legacy grows larger than any award resting on his shelves. A legacy shaped not by perfection, but by endurance, by humility, and by the courage to keep loving despite every loss that tried to break him. Here in the calm glow of his last years, surrounded by a wife who stayed, by stepdaughters who still reach for him across time, and by the quiet world he once feared he'd never find, Robert Duvall finally lives the truth he spent a lifetime earning. That a man is not remembered for what he gains, but for what he continues to give long after the storms have passed. What makes Robert Duvall's life extraordinary is not the wealth, nor the awards, nor the immortality etched into Hollywood history. It is the man beneath it all, the boy who once feared he would never belong, the young actor who kept getting up after every rejection, the husband who rebuilt after heartbreak, the brother who grieved deeply, and the aging artist who still chooses tenderness over bitterness. His journey whispers a truth too easily forgotten. Greatness is not born from ease, but from choosing hope again and again, even when hope feels impossible. To every viewer of Golden American Stars, may his life remind you that your story is not over, that your greatest chapter may still lie ahead, that resilience can outshine luck, that kindness carries farther than fame, and that every heartbreak, no matter how devastating, can lead you closer to the life meant for you. If this story touched you, please leave a like. Share it with someone who needs strength and subscribe so we may continue honoring the human, powerful, unforgettable lives behind America's greatest stars. And from all of us at Golden American Stars, May your days be filled with health, peace, love, and abundance. May life treat you gently, and may every storm you survive lead you toward the light waiting on the other side.